I promise to keep this fun and entertaining, although we're going to nerd out on some taxation for a while. If we could get the lights. When I talk, I find myself talking to different communities and talking to different cities. Oftentimes I have to put in a frame of reference. How do I look at places, or what lessons can you take away from my presentation? So I like to put those lessons up front. First, I want to talk to you about how I look at cities, and I typically look at cities like a form of DNA, that they all have places in time, that you started in one way in fashion, and you're going to grow. My biggest lesson to put up front to people is think about where you're going into the future, much in the way that I see myself when I started my life, and I was 3 months old and I had a lot of hair. And this is my trajectory, right? I'll be Papa whether I like it or not. There are things that I can't change in becoming my grandfather. I can see it coming a mile away, or more importantly, this guy, my dad. I'm genetically Italian. You can tell from my name. You can tell how I wave my hands around when I talk. But we also have a genetic predisposition to heart disease, that I know that every Minicozzi male in my family has had a heart issue of one way or another. My dad has had a 7 bypass heart surgery. It was no surprise when he went in for that. So I know that's in my future. I know that's part of my genetic material going forward, and I have to make choices now to deal with that into the future, right? So I eat right, I exercise, I lower my stress level. All of those things that are cost to me today add to my longevity in the future, and hopefully I can dodge the issues of my genes, right? So who's your grandfather? Who's your town's grandfather? What is Odd going to want to be when it grows up? What lessons are you learning from Salt Lake or other places? Those issues, how can you avoid their disasters? How could you avoid their issues? So do try to find and keep a frame of reference of a place that you want to be, but also keep a frame of reference of those places that have the issues that you have. Greg and I were talking about just township relationships that you all have here, where you're in the same family, but you're competing for the same material. So you're competing against the same homeowner or the same business to locate somewhere in this metro region, but you're essentially competing against each other, brothers and sisters in the same family. So if you go to some place like New York State, and upstate New York in particular, where they've lost a lot of jobs, they still have township competition, but they're essentially fighting against each other and causing harm to the overall economy in that place. They don't have the blessings that you all have of new population coming in. They're actually going backwards. So that's a good place to go to just see the political dynamics of what could happen with the place. The other thing I want to put up front here is ask you a quick little test. I do this with a lot of people. For those of you that saw my presentation at the conference, don't shout the answers out. But I'm going to give you 5 seconds to tell me how many shapes you see in this kid's puzzle. You're not going to fail if you don't get it right, but just tell me how many shapes you see. This is really simple. I'll give you 5 seconds. Ready, go. Okay, who's got the answer?
All of them.
That's not a number. I don't know if we need a number here. 10? 14? 15? Maybe I want to go higher than 15? 20. All right. How many kids were on the school bus? What time was it on the clock? So Greg and I were talking about behavioral economics on the way in here. We have behavioral flaws as humans. Our brains work certain ways. What I just did to you, there's a Nobel Prize winning behavioral psychologist. His name is Daniel Kahneman. He wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. We have a couple modes of thinking. What I just did is put you in fast mode. Fast mode, answer really quickly. You will filter out information. You did not see the 5 kids on the bus. You didn't see that it was 10 after 10 on the clock because I didn't ask you that. But that data was there. When you decide what's going on with your community, what I want you to wonder is, do you have enough information at the table to make a planning decision, a zoning decision, an ordinance change? Are you thinking through all the data that's possible, or are you being steered by the questions that are in front of you? It's a parking study. Okay, well that predetermines a certain set of principles that get you into that thought process. You might be missing that it actually might be a housing problem, and it's not a parking problem. It's a location of where people are, and the parking is just a symptom of a broader problem. Are you asking the right questions? All of this stuff that I'm about to do from here forward is just asking a different set of questions of data that's already out there. This is not rocket science what we do. So the biggest question to me is, what is a city? What are you creating here? What is this thing that you live in, and how does it operate? At that conference, I actually asked them this question as well, which is this great, I love this quote from Mark Twain. So just show of hands, is the county's assessor in the room? Does anybody in the room, have you read your local tax assessment policies and how your assessor puts price on real estate? Anyone? Yeah, one in the back. I love this quote from Mark Twain: a person who won't read has no advantage over one who can't read. If you're choosing not to read these documents, you really don't understand the cash flow of how your city operates. You're essentially illiterate with your taxation. And I'm not going to say that I'm some genius that can read this stuff. I'm an architect. I like to look at pictures. I hate reading tax policies. But I'll suffer through it because it's super important. So Asheville, this is where I live now. It's up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Smoky Mountains. We just had a whole bunch of wildfires that y'all might have heard about. Home of bluegrass music. Our big thing right now is beer. It's kind of crazy. We've got 50 breweries in town. We're only 90,000 people, which is kind of insane. And like any quirky little mountain town, we have men dressed as nuns on tall bikes that eat fire. It's your typical little place. I'll get to why that guy dresses like a nun in a little bit later. But this is how Asheville started back in the 1800s. This is a shot down Main Street. 15 years after this picture was taken, this is what it became. We like to say the three T's made Asheville: trains, tourism, and tuberculosis. Much in the way that your town had a boom when the trains came through with the junction, we had a similar effect, but ours was mostly tourism and people escaping the polluted cities of the Northeast. We had the second streetcar line in the entire country. Presidents came to visit. We've had Obama in Asheville 3 times now. In the 1920s, we were growing at 20% in population every single year of that decade, which is ridiculous growth. We became the second largest city in North Carolina. Did y'all know that Asheville was the second largest city in North Carolina? The only city that was bigger than us by the time the Depression hit was Winston-Salem. So we were bigger than Charlotte, Raleigh, all these places you've heard of. In that process, we achieved the highest debt per capita of the entire United States. We were number 1 in debt. That's kind of awesome. And when the Depression hit and our books were audited, we thought we had $5 million in the bank. It turned out we had $18,000 in the bank. Little clerical error there. Our city council was indicted and the mayor committed suicide. That's how we entered the Depression. We call that leadership in Asheville, by the way. Thomas Wolfe, famous American author, native of Asheville, this is what he had to say about his hometown. Asheville has squandered fabulous sums. They've flung away the earnings of a lifetime. They've mortgaged those of a generation to come. They have ruined a city, and in doing so, they've ruined themselves, their children, and their children's children. That's a heck of a thing for a hometown boy to say about their town, right? Incidentally, he wrote it in a book. And I don't know if you know much about Southern culture, but they're very civil until things like this happen, and then all sorts of threats happen. Incidentally, his second book was called You Can't Go Home Again, for obvious reasons. And it would take generations for us to deal with this. We actually were one of the few cities in the entire United States that didn't participate in the New Deal program. We took the debt out, we paid it off. It took us until 1976 to pay it off. You can tell it's a big deal because we get Miss Asheville to wear her tiara, and we get these 3 guys to burn the last bond. They teleprompter in Billy Graham. When Billy shows up, it's a big deal. But what's crazy about this is it's the 3rd headline in the paper. It didn't even lead that day. What led was somebody dying in a prison fire, not even in our county. This 2 counties over. So it shows you that damage to the children's children. We couldn't even be proud of this. And when we did pay off that debt, we started cooking with gas. We cut a highway through this downtown, which was the Crosstown Expressway. And the coup de grace was blowing the mountain open with the Bowcatcher Cut. And incidentally, the community actually fought that. They wanted a tunnel, and DOT didn't have the technology to build a tunnel. They didn't know how to, even though some lost civilization of humans left us a tunnel right there. Apparently that doesn't transfer over there. On the other side of the cut, the mall happened, and our downtown died. Is this a familiar story for folks? So this is shots of downtown Asheville. That's not too long ago. That's a 1996 Chevy Celebrity. You can blow a cannon off and not hit a pedestrian. I love how they used aluminum, just like, cover it up and hope that it disappears. And we just had all these buildings just fallow, just boarded up, just sitting there rotting away. And like a Greek choir, anytime somebody tried to fix a building downtown, we had all of our leadership say, that won't work here. We're not Boston, we're not Savannah, we're not New Orleans, that's not who we are. We're rural mountain people, and we're just done with that downtown. Do y'all have people like that here? Is apparently, every community I go to has got this. And that's all right, that's an opinion. Our company was started, our parent company is a for-profit real estate development company called Public Interest Projects. PIP was started by Julian Price, who's in the upper left, who essentially, he had $15 million worth of inheritance, and he put it right into a real estate development company. 75% of his money we used for fixing buildings, the sticks and bricks, mostly getting people to live downtown. Then we used the remaining 25% to seed businesses. So the restaurants, quirky restaurants, the first vegetarian restaurant called the Laughing Seed, we invested in it. The bank said it would never work. The restaurateurs had a lunch counter at the YMCA, and everybody ate their food, but they went to the bank, and the bank looked at the menu, and they're like, where's your pork? North Carolina's a pork state. No one's going to eat this vegetable stuff. We put them in business. They're now an anchor institution in Asheville. Asheville is one of the top 10 vegetarian cities in the entire country, and that's all because we had the faith in that. I'm going to skip over Pat real quick, but Pat was my boss. He's Julian's trustee, and he made a lot of this work. And for the attorneys in the audience, basically Pat is an attorney, and his job was to act as the principal of the real estate development company. I learned a lot from Pat. Those are some of his lessons on the left of how we look at real estate development and why we did the things that we did. But put simply, we just take buildings like this. This is the old Asheville Hotel, and we converted it into residential upstairs and a bookstore downstairs. The bookstore was essentially already in town. It was a local entrepreneur. She was great. We expanded her into our business, and we got her healthy before Barnes & Noble and Borders came. We wanted that business to be healthy. But what we found ourselves doing is constantly talking about data, bringing all this information to our elected officials and explain to them why it matters to have downtown development. This is what the value of downtown. So if we're a $15 million investor in a downtown, in 1991, our downtown was worth $100 million. So we're a $15 million investor inside a $100 million portfolio. But that $100 million portfolio, just by fixing buildings that were already there, just by getting those upper stories occupied, you think of the Wells Fargo across the street or around the corner, adding uses in those upper stories increases the tax value. But the building was already there. So what happened is our downtown essentially grew, 5 times in value, 4 times in value. Now to show you that it wasn't all love and roses in Asheville, this is one of my favorite people. His name is Chris Peterson. Chris is a vocal critic of downtown investment, and these were his campaign ads from the 90s. $26 million of wasteful spending. Look at this poor guy's got a just crying. He's got this big ball tacked to his ankle. Parking garages, downtown streetscapes. So $26 million in downtown investment. Now, we don't have $26 million. That's a lot of money. Does anybody have $26 million in your pocket? Of course not. In Chris's world, that's a lot of money. It's a waste to dump into downtown. Downtown development for bureaucrats instead of water, sewer, and streets for our citizen. All right, I get it. I understand your opinion, Chris. You don't like downtown development. But let's talk about this for a second. If y'all invest $26 million on a $100 million asset, and that asset grows to $500 million, is investing 26 and gaining a $400 million return on that investment, is that a good return on investment? Yes. Why do we listen to Chris? I don't care about his opinion, there's facts, right? So this is why it matters where you put your money. You're going to get a different return on investment on it, but you have to pay attention to that math. Incidentally, Chris has amped up his game. He's still around. He's got now full color websites with lightning bolts coming out of the mayor's eyes and storm clouds and fire and brimstone. It's kind of awesome. But why does Chris behave this way, and why does it matter? Well, I've got this book that I found in a garage sale, and it's a teacher's guide, the city, the town, and the country. So we have the city, the town, and the country, right? This is a book from 1959. 3rd grade. So in kindergarten, you learn about your house, first grade, the school, second grade, the neighborhood, third grade, you learn about regional planning. This used to be taught in elementary school. In the teacher's guide, it says things like this. Remember, too, that many children, whether urban and rural, and regardless of region, are tragically limited in their knowledge of their world, and their world's largely the space in which they live and operate. What we have to deal with, what you all have to deal with when you talk about civics and city making, is this tragic limitation in what people really understand is going on in their community. You know, they may know where they live, where they drop the kids off to school, where they go to work, where they get their groceries, but the reality of how the city functions is much more dynamic than that. But you'll hear about, I don't have a parking space, or you know, this one intersection didn't get snow removal. Got it. There's like a whole other thing here, right? This other city that's going on. You all have different patterns in how you operate and live within that city, and it's all got to work, not just one person's work. So really we need to step out and understand what cities really are. I love this. This is straight out of Oxford Dictionary. Incorporate, to constitute a company, or a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. So y'all have a charter to manage a corporation. You are incorporated. You have a finite boundary of land, and for council, y'all are the board of directors for managing this multi-billion-dollar corporation, right? So my state, incidentally, made it illegal for my city to annex land. So what we have is a finite boundary of land. That's all we have is a certain number of acres, and we have to manage those acres. So my city is worth $12.8 billion in taxable value. So as a corporation, my mayor is 6 times the value of Ted Turner, or about 13 times the value of your billionaire. You know, this is the governor's father, right? So if this is how we look at land, if this is, or businesses, if this is how we measure something like this, shouldn't we be doing the same thing for our city? Shouldn't we be looking at land as a product? Land is what you manage, land is all that you have, it's your corporate boundary. Shouldn't you look at it like a farmer? So when farmers look at real estate, what farmers do is they're making an economic model of how that operates. So they don't just go out and till all of the soil. They're running what's going on in the marketplace. What do soybeans make per acre in the marketplace? What do they produce? So if we look at buildings the same way, what would the numbers look like? So this is one of our buildings. This is the streetscape project that Chris got irritated about, by the way. So we got a garbage can, a bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree. Thank you, city, for that $30,000 at our front door. That's our subsidy, right? That was your gift to us in our property. We took this from an empty building to retail, office, and then residential on the upper 4 stories. The taxable value of that building went from $300,000 to $11 million. That's the taxable value. So what happened on the taxes on that property is they shot up 3,500%. That's not money that we get. That's money that the community gets. That's taxes they get just grew by 3,500%. So do you all have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? Wouldn't you like that? So people say, well, Joe, that's not fair. That's an $11 million building. You have this Walmart over here at $20 million. All right, fair enough. That Walmart pays $220,000 in property taxes. This is my house. Those are my dogs. My dogs are a little weird, by the way. They think they're lions. We're on 1/10 of an acre. We pay $2,000 in taxes. So if a 1-acre cookie cutter fell from space and hit my neighborhood, it'd grab 10 houses, right? Each paying $2,000, or about $20,000 an acre in taxes. Y'all follow me?
Yep, gotcha.
So let's lift that 1-acre cookie cutter up, fly it in space, drop it on that Walmart, divide its $220,000 by 34 acres, and on a per acre basis, this is what you get out of that Walmart. Now, if you had an acre of our building downtown, this is what you get. So if you could grow a crop, what kind of crop yield would you want to have? I was presenting this in Colorado. I was like, let me make it easy for you people in Colorado. If you're going to grow something, what are you going to grow? They got it. Cash crops, right? We understand that. We understand the economics of that. Just apply that to buildings. Now, in Colorado's case, they actually run their cities off pretty much monolithically off retail taxes. So they're like, look, we take the losses in property taxes for the retail. Let's run the numbers again. You know, Walmart, a typical Walmart sells $70 million, $77 million worth of stuff. But the city gets a portion of that. So we get 27% of that 8-cent sales tax on that 77 million. So we don't get 77 million, we get the piece back, which is still significant. It's about 47,500 an acre. Add that to the 3,300 we're getting at the city level in taxes. So the city's total take per acre is 51,000 for total taxes out of that Walmart. That's just our property taxes per acre. Now we sell stuff, we have retail on the ground floor. Let's add our retail taxes. Now you're cooking with gas. Jobs per acre. I mean, it's kind of stunning when you just make things apples to apples. The truth is in the data. The numbers speak for themselves. We even have 90 units of residential per acre versus their 0. You just get more stuff in less space. And there's a reason why we've been building cities for tens of thousands of years this way. This goes all the way back to Damascus. This is how we make efficient places for us as people. And there's lessons in that. Now, some of you might be realizing, all right, dude, what's your problem? Why do you hate Walmart? I've gotten that from a couple of people, and I'm like, you're totally missing the point if that's what you're taking away out of this. Incidentally, I presented at the International Association of Tax Assessing Officers Conference, the National Conference for Assessors, which is probably the squarest conference I've ever been to. It makes a planning conference look like Burning Man. It's kind of crazy. It's unbelievably square. And very, very serious people. But what was crazy is the head of Walmart's property tax division, this guy, Mr. Terrell, was presenting Walmart. And he presented case study after case study, spreadsheet after spreadsheet on how cheap his buildings are. It was kind of phenomenal. It's like 8 in the morning, I'm watching this, and he's like, look, our buildings are so cheap, and he's showing spreadsheets, and I'm like, wow, this is brilliant. 2,000 assessors in one room, he's getting all of his property tax bills lowered in one meeting. How efficient is that? Now, as a citizen, that's all I could hear is him yelling, we're paying the lowest taxes in your community, and all the assessors were totally cool with it. Assessors are agnostic. If it's a cheap building, if it's worth nothing, all right, it's cheap and it's worth nothing. What do they care? And it's kind of weird. So I went up to the microphone after his presentation. I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And he immediately shot back 15 years. We build that building, we depreciate it as quickly as possible down to nothing, build another building, start the depreciation cycle. We really don't care about the buildings. We have the distribution network, and we want to depreciate these buildings down to nothing. From the mouth of babes. I don't hate the player, it's the game. Put real simply, when you tax on value, there's a perverse incentive to build junk in your community. The average Walmart lasts less than a house cat in its lifetime. That's the truth. That's the reality of that data. Just be aware of it. So if you're going to make those decisions, if you're going to have that building typology, just realize what you're going to get out of it, measure it, and make sure you're accounting for 16 years from now when you've got an empty box. And that's that style of development. Or deal with your tax system differently. So that's the city side. As you know, cities sit inside these other corporations called counties. So I am a shareholder inside, our county is called Buncombe County. We don't have a great relationship with our county. Our county took our water system away from us and our airport and didn't pay us a red cent for either of them. So we sued the county over the water system. And because of that, they got mad at us, and that's where that annexation law came down. And if that wasn't bad enough, they got our state legislator, Senator Forrester, to call us a cesspool of sin. And that's why that guy's a tour guide on a local tour bus. That's why he dresses like a nun and he squirts everybody in the face and calls them sinners. He's a weird guy. But it's kind of an unfortunate thing that it's like, look, I pay county taxes. I know that you don't like the city. That's cool. But how about a thank you card every once in a while? Because the average city resident pays more county taxes per acre at about $1,700 an acre, comes out of the city, goes to the county and county taxes, while my brother and sister out in the unincorporated county only pays $1,200 an acre in county taxes. So let's just write that down and just be aware of it and respect it. We're all in this together. Don't hate on us. I hope you all don't have as bad a relationship. By the way, if you ever heard the term, you don't know bunk? Yeah, Buncombe County. It's an awesome place. Here's the mall at $8,000 an acre versus residential. So commercial produces more property taxes than residential because they're more expensive buildings. We get it. And and that's a truth. But let's not stop there. Let's go to downtown now. So here's the mall at $8,000 an acre. Here's our building at $250,000 an acre of county taxes. So what we find is what's good for downtown is great for the city, but it's unbelievable for the county. Because when we call the police, the sheriff doesn't show up. You know, the county doesn't pick up our garbage. You know, we pay an additional tax on top of that that's to our city. So this is what my county gets out of our building downtown. There's no kids in that building. So it's all gravy, you know. And that's just the information that we want to put out there, that we're all in this together. We should be working together with our county to grow our downtown up. Now, I want you to realize what I'm showing you all is not complex math. I don't have a finance degree. I'm not a CPA. This is just simple productivity analysis. We do this with cars, right? When we talk about cars, we don't talk about cars and compare cars on a miles per tank basis, do we? If we did, we'd all be driving Ford F-150s at 650 miles per tank. You guys would laugh at me. You're like, Joe, come on now. Tanks are different sizes. It's the gallon of gas that drives a car. So when we say miles from miles per tank to miles per gallon, oh, look, the numbers just changed. And we should all be driving BMW Acetas at 70 miles per gallon. It's a dangerous little car, though. That's the front door. You know, I'm using that as a joke or a prop, just to, you all already know this, right? It's productivity. Yet with buildings, when we talk about buildings, it's like, oh, this is a $10 million building. It's like, yeah, but it's like 50 acres of land. You know, where a building downtown might be $200,000 in taxable value, but it's not like 1/15 of an acre. So how do you compare them? Well, it's the land that makes things equal. So these are just the relentless rules of humble arithmetic. If you just do the math on this stuff, it'll show you what's going on. Now we take it to the next level and we say, okay, well, if I can see what's going on inside your brain, if I can do an MRI and see what your creative thought process is doing versus your brainstem activity, if I can follow what's going on in your brain, can I do the same thing with the economics of your city? So we'll take the city, and this actually goes back to Ian McHarg in the 1960s with a book, Design with Nature. We were talking about this earlier tonight. And there's ways to strip the world and move the city aside and see layers. So I don't know if this is going to show up well, but there's streets and infrastructure. Buildings are built on those. And then you have the ologies. You have hydrology, geology, nature and the man-made. But can we split nature from the man-made? And can I show you what's going on with your economics, your policies, your taxes, how it's functioning financially? So let's go back to Asheville for a second. Here's my county. So this is my entire county taxable value. So you see this big gray splotch up here. That's Mount Mitchell. That's the tallest mountain east of the Mississippi. It's part of the federal park system, not paying taxes. We don't care about it. So just to be crude, no taxes, no revenue, don't care. So I just gray it out. This is the Biltmore Estate. So low value is in green, hot purple is high value. You can see the Biltmore Estate, this big purple splotch. The Biltmore Estate's worth $100 million. When Bill Cecil shows up at one of our council meetings, we all genuflect and thank him for his time. He's the heir to the Vanderbilt fortune. Some of you all have heard of the Vanderbilt house, the Biltmore Estate. It's the biggest house in America, and he's sitting on 4,000 acres of land. So it's not a fair way of looking at his house versus my house. I mean, he's got the biggest gas tank in the entire county, right? So rather than total value, let's do a value per acre. Let's make it apples to apples. And oh, look, the map changes. I'll just show it to you in 3D. Can you guess where downtown Asheville might possibly be? And I don't know if you can see this, but it actually goes way up here. It's big purple spikes. And also you can see our little sister over here, Black Mountain, on the right, 10 miles to the east. You can see its main street functioning very similar to our main street. But we're like Mama Bear and they're like Baby Bear. They're like a smaller version. But that urban form is showing up in the tax economics. And they only have 2-story buildings in their main street. But you can see the data quite clear. It's like an economic MRI. Now we've done this all across the country. We've done this in Canada, New Zealand, many different states. Doesn't matter, just taking everybody's data. We've done it in Driggs, Idaho, which is not exactly the most urban place on the planet. And when you mash up everybody's numbers, for every $1 of county property taxes per acre somebody out in the county is paying, their brother or sister inside the city is paying about $5 to that same county per acre. The Walmart's about $7, the mall's about $9. As soon as you get to a 2-story building, it's just like stacking dollar bills. As soon as you get to that 2-story building, it pumps up. 3-story building, it pumps up again. And it's not a proportional growth when you add stories, it's an exponential growth, like a ski slope. And that's the data. That's what's happening. Durango, Colorado, if y'all are familiar with that, we did a project in Durango. Anybody want to take a guess where downtown Durango might possibly be? This is all of La Plata County.
Spikes.
Yeah. So retail sales are super important in Colorado. This is a really nerdy chart that we made of all different states. In red is property taxes. So when we said this is the local tax productivity or producers, how you guys run your government at a local level. And when we say local, we're saying city and county together because you're in it together. Utah, the red is property taxes, green is retail taxes. So you get a quite handsome sum of retail taxes at a local level. You generally don't want to be at the far right end of the spectrum over here in states like Arkansas or Louisiana, where the cities are run almost primarily off retail taxes, because when a recession hits, that's when people stop shopping. And when they stop shopping, you stop getting taxes. It's like all of a sudden you can't afford your city because of a recession, and that kind of hurts. But Colorado is just to the east of you a little bit, and that retail tax pretty much primarily funds the town. So here's their property tax model done by districts. And you can see downtown the property tax. South Durango is their mall, Walmart, all of their monolithic retail strip that comes out of the city on South Durango. So this is property taxes. So we ran their retail taxes per acre, and there they are. What's funny when we show this stuff, when we do these in other places, I did it in Syracuse, New York. I think I'm going to come back to that. And the downtown, one of the guys on the downtown board said to me, he goes, "There's no way that downtown's beating the mall in retail taxes. My daughter shops at the mall. She drops $200 a month." I'm like, "Okay, how often is she there?" And he's like, "Every weekend. She's there every weekend dropping money." And I said, "Well, that's great, 8 times a month. You had lunch downtown. How much did you spend today?" He said, $12. I said, "Multiply that times 20. And he said, "Oh my God, I spend more than my daughter." Like, yeah, it's math. The data is there, just run the numbers and see what happens. We can't tell. This is the total productivity, property tax plus retail tax. Now you see that downtown is not only heads and shoulders, it's leaps and bounds above everything else. Jobs, you can map that too. So this is the jobs for all of La Plata County. You can tell where they're going. So just to map 2 districts, taking downtown and mapping it against the 100% commercial stuff, downtown's about $1 million short in retail production from the South Durango area, 2 different compared squares. You look at the county taxes that they get out of downtown versus South Durango. Again, South Durango is winning. But the real key issue here is downtown's only 1/3 of the land area, yet it's almost as productive. So if you know that it's almost as productive on a smaller footprint, why don't you just add 8.3 acres or more downtown? Just find 8.3 acres of parking lots or empty land in downtown and just cultivate more wealth. You'll actually catch up in retail taxes to everything in South Durango. We're total numbers nerds, by the way, so we took the next step and ran an area graph. And these are all the different districts. Downtown is this top district. South Durango is this bottom district. And you see what happens with the recession, how it makes a saddle from 2004 to 2013 at the right. So everything dips down and then comes back, right? But back in 2004, downtown was about 86% of the retail tax production of South Durango. After the recession, downtown grew, and it was kind of crazy. It actually almost caught up to about 91% of South Durango. So we asked the next question. We're like, okay, surely this is the new buildings they're adding in downtown, the more retail they're building downtown. Downtown's got more buildings going on than South Durango. That's why it's catching up. When we pulled all the building permit data, we were really surprised to see that downtown only added 17,000 square feet, while South Durango was adding 300,000 square feet. So pound for pound, square inch for square inch, downtown was killing it in retail tax productivity. You only had to add a little bit more to catch up. Again, ask the question, dig into the data, get some numbers, let the numbers tell you what's going on. So the client there was, there was also some local business entrepreneurs that wanted to support local small business. So they wanted us to go the next level deeper, which is, could you look at local business versus national chains? So they actually opened their books. Peter Schertz, who owned the book, local coffee shop. So they're both 1-story retail on Main Street. versus the Walmart. That's the footprint difference in the corporation, 0.15 acres versus 13. This is the county's property taxes paid per acre out of each. So the county's getting a heck of a lot more of a deal in property taxes per acre out of Main Street versus the Walmart. Retail taxes that the city's getting, again, this is the data. So Peter and Tim are producing about $550,000 of retail taxes per acre versus Walmart at 100,000, 150,000. Jobs. Who's producing more jobs per acre? Now let me ask you a question as a local community. When you look at both sides of the ledger, on the right or the left, ask yourself these questions. Who's hiring the local accountant? Who's hiring the local attorney? Who's taking out ads in the newspaper at a local level? When you need some help at a local Little League team or something like that, who's going to sponsor a Little League team? These are all the benefits that you get out of that local business. They just don't have the wherewithal or the ability or time to actually talk about and celebrate their own numbers. But the numbers are there if you just ask. So some of you are probably thinking, Joe, you just don't get it. You don't understand America. We got lots of land. We can just spread out. So what if I could just bring you the Ghost of Christmas Future? What if I could bring you a community that 100% sprawled, just did it? And we got it in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Anybody heard of Lawrenceville, Georgia? Lawrenceville, Georgia, I'd never heard of it when they hired us. Lawrenceville is the county seat of Gwinnett County. And I was under explicit orders when we did the project that I was not allowed to say 4 words. I couldn't say the word urban, city, town, or municipal in my presentation to the community, which is kind of hard when your company's called Urban 3, but whatever, I'll roll with you, whatever you want. And they told me we're rural people. We're not in the beltway of Atlanta. We're out here. We're this county out here. There's Lawrenceville. You can see it a little bit there. So they're outside the beltway. They're rural. So when we started doing the work with them, we found out that there were 800,000 people in the county, 800,000 people in the county, which is mind-blowing. So I called up my client, who was a Chamber of Commerce, and I was like, Kelly, y'all are 800,000 people. And she said, I know, honey, but you need to understand, we're huge. We're a big county. We're 460 square miles. All right, what the hell do I know? I don't understand what that means, but I can divide your county square miles into your population. 800,000 people divided into 460 square miles is density. You're 1,900 people per square mile, which is less dense than DeKalb. DeKalb has a piece of Atlanta in it. Atlanta's in a couple counties. But okay, we got it. You're less dense than Atlanta. But we had all this other data, so we put it out there for them. And I said, check this out. This is kind of a little mind-blowing. You're actually 200 people denser than Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. What's in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina? Charlotte. Y'all have heard of Charlotte, right? Didn't hear of Lawrenceville, did you? There's 600 people denser per square mile than Davidson, Tennessee. That's Nashville. So these two places that are actually less dense both have a professional football team. Never heard of the Lawrenceville Saints or something, right? I mean, it's just, as a planner, I'm just like, how'd you do this? How did you get more dense than these places and you didn't produce a city that anybody's even heard of? Your biggest place is 30,000 people. But you're cheek to cheek, edge to edge. This is Austin. You're double the density of Austin. This is Raleigh. This is Asheville. And over there is Orange County, North Carolina. That's Chapel Hill. That's what a rural town looks like in a rural environment. So we did their model, and Josh McCarty, the GIS guy in my office that was doing this, I was like, Josh, that doesn't look right. Would you turn it on its side? So he turned it, and that's the last farm right there. They pretty much edge to edge, the same pattern of development the whole way. And this is what they got. It looks like a 1970s shag carpet. It's just like the same thing straight across the whole thing. And to show you why I was freaking out, this is what we typically see. This is Orange County. So I can see municipality, 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 and I could see Main Street, Main Street, Main Street. In each of the models, this is some new urbanism over here. The data is showing us what's going on. I'm like, how'd you do this? I mean, these are choices you made. This is stuff that you consciously did through all of your policies in whatever kind of fantasy land you guys are living in, what you thought you were. But then there's a reality that you created. So your highest value per acre is $8 million an acre. All these places to the left of you are less dense. So you created density, but you didn't create value. You didn't create wealth. So just to rub it in a little bit, we made an economic heart monitor and put the 3 counties side by side by side. So I've got Davidson County, which is Nashville, Austin, which is Travis County, and Lawrenceville is flatlining over there. So $152 million spike right there. Austin is peaking at $476 million, and Lawrenceville is a whopping $8 million an acre. And they told me, they're like, but we're not urban. I'm like, I never called you urban. I called you dense. You know, it's just a pun intended. But it's, you know, I said, y'all have the same horizontal infrastructure. You have all the same horizontal infrastructure as this place, but you have none of the vertical stuff to pay for it. Are you guys going broke yet? And they're like, oh, yeah, we're broke. Who would have thought? You've got to pay for that infrastructure. It doesn't, when you put it on the ground, it doesn't just disappear. You have to plow it. You have to maintain those streets. You have to fix those pipes. All that is a cost. So it doesn't matter what you say you are. I could tell you I'm Brad Pitt. This is me. I can think this all day long. But sooner or later, I got to walk by a mirror, right? There's reality. So how does this happen? We did a project in Chattanooga. Here's their downtown. This area across the river is called the North Shore. It's where all the hipsters live, like 20-year-old men with beards that go down to their knees and stuff stapled in their head and stuff like that. It's the hipster zone, whatever. It's working for them. This developer came in from Atlanta and proposed a 1-story commercial box grocery store. This is the brand called Publix. I don't know if you've ever heard of Publix. Conventional grocery store. So he's asking the mayor, just get rid of all these urban design guidelines you have because my guy from Atlanta doesn't do that. He just does conventional grocery stores. That's the way his business model is. You need to get your laws out of the way. So the community asked us, can you do a cost benefit of that? Can you see what the cost is to get rid of your policies? So here's the site right there. There's some local mixed-use buildings going on, already happening. We can pull the comps on those. You've got a local grocery store over here called Green Life that a local guy did. It's like a Whole Foods kind of thing. And then you have townhouses up there. So you have all of the ingredients of that mixed-use environment already happening in your community, so you can put a price tag on it. We can figure it out. We have conventional public grocery stores already happening in their community. We can do a cost estimate of those as well. Or the local stuff, this is office above retail on the right, residential above retail on the left. That's what it looks like. This is the local grocery store. It's called a deep throat model, where you have a big box in the back and you kind of glue on a thin 2-story building kind of shoved onto the front. So you have like retail on the ground floor and like yoga studios on the second floor or whatever. Publix has done urban buildings. This is Miami Beach. It looks like a UFO hit it, but it's really 2 layers of parking on the roof. So in a hyperdensity model, this is hyperdense. There's a conveyor belt that actually gets you to your car with your grocery cart. This is a small footprint Publix grocery store in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's called a hybrid model, where you have your surface parking lot on the back and you have your street front sidewalk entrance on the sidewalk. So it's a 2-face one. This is the site. So there's 34 foot of grade change. What was kind of mind-blowing is how few people read plans. Now, I'm trained as an architect. I was on my city's planning commission. And during that term, it was kind of phenomenal to me how few of my fellow counselors would actually read what's going on in the drawings. And so it would fall onto the architects to kind of explain things. Now, I don't know if you saw this. There's 34 foot of grade change across the site. Let's go back for a second. Oops. So do y'all see the retaining wall on this drawing? The developers clearly labeled it in 4-point font right there. But that dashed line that runs through the site is a retaining wall that goes clear through the whole property. So what the developer's proposing is to take that 34 foot of grade and level it pancake flat. So we drew a 3-dimensional model to show people that these houses up here get to look at a roof that's like a tarmac of roofing, and then here's your 1/4 mile long future graffiti wall. But we're also running the taxes down here on the lower left, but we'll come back to the taxes in a second. So this is what the developer's proposing to you. Are you guys cool with getting a big retaining wall? It's not our community, it's your community. Do whatever you want. But there it is. Just be aware of that decision. So this was a software called SketchUp. It used to be free. Now it's still pretty inexpensive. But this is stuff that you can use at your planning department. So just to do Urban Design 101, let's do housing facing housing, a couple mixed-use buildings in the corner, call it a day, this meets the zoning code. Here's what you get. Now let's apply some better site design and do what the local guy did and move the grocery store up against the street. You still have a belly of parking in the center and then a crust of mix of uses around the streets. Everybody's happy. There you go. Go crazy, do Miami Beach. You've got 34 foot of grade change, just drive right up on the roof, park it, densify the heck out of it, let's go crazy. That's what you get. Back it down to West Palm Beach, the hybrid model, bigger parking in the center, mix of uses around it. And this is what you get. And let's say you irritate the developer goes back to Atlanta, you don't get a grocery store, you get what's already happening in your community, townhouses and mixed-use development. Woe is us, this is what you get. Now, when I'm showing you in real estate development world, in my world, what we do is called opportunity cost modeling. When we look at a piece of property, we're looking at multiple opportunities, multiple designs that we could do on that site, and we're running the cash flow of each of those to see what works for us. So if I'm coming to your community as a developer and asking you to do something with your rules, that's your money on the table. You should be doing the same thing. Are you getting a square deal out of this? And just run the numbers on it. So here's the taxes currently paid on the site. So the developer is bringing an opportunity to gain $45,000 of new taxes on this site. So it's true, they're going to be making 3 times the taxes that's already being paid out there. But you're kind of starting from nothing. It's kind of a fallow site. So if you just did Urban Design 101, this is the taxes you'd yield on an annual basis. Do the local guy, the local Green Life model, this is the taxes you'd get per year. Go crazy, do Miami Beach. Back it down to West Palm Beach and your no-build scenario. So these are all the opportunities afforded to the community that they're essentially challenging on the decision. Which one do you want to take? So let's just take a couple of these. Let's just take the middle ground, local guy versus what's being offered. Let's look at them side by side. Here you are. So you not only see what the city's getting per year, but we also ran what the county's getting. So for the county folks in the room, would you rather have $27,000 or would you rather have $152,000 worth of county property taxes per year? So is the city talking with the county, or do you have them at the table to say, hey, we could actually work together and get both be better off with this, right? So the reality of these numbers, there's another term that we use in real estate development, it's called net present value. So it's what my cost of my decision is today, netted over time and the cost of time. So really, when I'm showing you these numbers, I'm not even showing you the real numbers. What I should be showing you is you're stuck with it for 20 years. So when you're stuck with it for 20 years, these aren't the numbers. This is just annually. So if we net forward the 20 years, this is what we're really talking about. So you're getting essentially from 300,000 to 600,000. So you're getting like 900,000. You're getting about a $600,000 gain in taxes over 20 years. But you're foregoing millions of dollars. So y'all could just reach in your pocket, just throw $2 million at the developer and say, okay, for your brain damage, we're going to give you $2 million, so you go talk with the guy that does the townhouses and work together. Here's $2 million. Even giving $2 million into the deal, at the end of 20 years, you're ahead of the game by $2.2 million versus what he's offering you. So for the elected officials in the room and for the finance folks, when you're looking at your budget and you can't afford a greenway or an art teacher or a dancing traffic cop. Y'all have dancing traffic cops here? You know, when you don't have the money for that, it's because it's tied up in a development pattern that's essentially undercutting the cost of services. You know, you don't send a bill to Walmart for the police calls that are there, do you? The average Walmart consumes all of its property taxes that they pay you with the police services that they drive. And that's the reality of that business. And it's a function of how our tax system works, which is kind of bizarre. Like this little clicker from Logitech, don't you think Logitech figured out how much the plastic costs in this thing before they put it out in the marketplace? Do you guys do that with your pipes? Do you figure out what the cost of the pipe is and make sure that it's captured in the cost of your property tax bill? No. So if you're not measuring this stuff, you can't manage it. If you don't do the math on this stuff, you can't see what's going on. In development, if I were to build this godforsaken place somewhere out in Arizona, it really is miserable, isn't it? But I've got soft costs and hard costs. I've got the cost of permitting. I got the cost of the physical stuff. I add that all together, divide it by the rooftops, and sell it. That's how I put a little bit of profit on there. That's how I do business of development, right? When we unplug the gate here and this thing gets attached onto your street, do you all send out an auditor to figure out what it costs your community and all of your municipal services, and do you send them a bill for all of that? The cost of all the roads to get out there, the park system, all of that. Do you figure that out and audit it and then send out that tax bill? The short answer is no, and I'm not the first person to come onto this. This actually goes back to the Nixon administration. In the 1960s, they figured this stuff out. In the 70s, the federal government was like, no one's paying any attention to math, so maybe we'll do it for them. And the Nixon administration created this document called the cost of sprawl. So if you ever heard the term sprawl, we can actually thank the Nixon administration for creating that word. And that's the reality of that data that's out there. You can buy this book for $17. It's a little weird. I mean, it's the 70s. It gets into the emotional cost of sprawl, which is kind of a little weird. But the numbers are good. So Lafayette, Louisiana asked us, the mayor there, it's a strong mayor form of government, Mayor Joey Durrell. He's a Cajun. Cajuns are really funny people. And he's like, Joe, we're going broke. You need to tell people how we're going broke. I'm a businessman. People don't understand business. You show them how we're going broke. I was like, all right, Mayor, whatever. When we dug into their numbers, it was kind of phenomenal. We found out that they were broke once before. These are covers of their budget document, and I'm not making this up. So in 1994, this is the cover of their budget document. Do you think their finance officer was trying to send a message about the state of affairs? By the way, this is their county. They call them parishes down there. So this is the parish government about to get hit by a tsunami and eaten by a shark. So what did the county officials do when faced with this great amount of information? Well, they kicked the can down the road. The very next year, undeterred, the finance officer was like, hey, did I mention how screwed we are? And the third year, they did a joint city-county government to essentially bail out the county. And I asked them, I said, so in the 20 years since you did this, when the city was actually doing it right, and now the city and the county are both broke, what did you do to change your behavior? Or did you just take the losses of the county and shackle the city, and it just took 20 years to drag the city down underwater? Like, what did you do? Did you just fire the artist from the first 2 years and go to Microsoft Clip Art? Like, what did you do? So we looked at their numbers. Here's downtown. Here's some new urbanism. But the other thing that we started measuring is the cost of stuff. So I'll just go real quickly through this. Just the pavement. Y'all own pavement. It's a lot of streets, a lot of surface area. They own 6.5 square miles of streets. So that's essentially, if you just shove all of those streets together, it's a massive parking lot, 6.5 square miles in area. Or about the size of going from Long Island to Manhattan to New Jersey, filling all of New York Harbor with asphalt. They have to fix that every 45 years because they're built on a rubbery soil. It's it's an old swamp, basically. Or it's about 12 times the size of the French Quarter. That's an expensive piece of information or piece of equipment to own. % of it are in these things. I call them publicly funded driveways, cul-de-sacs, dead ends. And they told me, they're like, well, people want to live at the end of cul-de-sacs. They don't want to have traffic. Like, well, great. That traffic's got to go somewhere. If it's not traffic, if there's no traffic going through it, then it's not a street. It's a driveway. This guy even treats it like a driveway, even parks a trailer there. You know, it's not about what people want. I mean, I want to be 6 foot tall and have a full head of hair. I think that you all should pay for that. Like, where did that come up? You have to pay for this stuff. So they have a lot more streets in their city limits, about 2/3 more road surface area in the city limits versus out in the county. Interestingly, this is how they pay for it. So I said to them, I made the mistake during a public meeting like this. I said, shouldn't these two pie charts match? If you own 1/3 of the system, shouldn't you be paying 1/3 of the cost? Seems fair. Well, that irritated one of the county commissioners. I love this. This is his response to that data. It's not where you live, it's what you believe. So we've moved from fact to religious beliefs now. The public works director responded by saying this: there's no such thing as an infrastructure fairy. So we had to Photoshop Kevin in on that one. And like I said, Cajuns are funny. So Kevin's just like, could you just show it to people in a different way? And we're like, all right, we'll do a cash flow analysis, kind of show you how it operates. So if I'm fixing a building, when we put an air conditioner on the roof, we know what that cost of that air conditioner is going to be. We also know the useful life of that air conditioner. So that air conditioner is going to last 15 years. We know that it's going to cost $20,000 to replace that. So we set up a replacement reserve, and every year we put a little money in the bank because we're not going to be able to just pull $20,000 out of our pocket in the future. So when that road gets built in 1960, so on the left of the chart is 1960, we freeze the music in 2015. So when you took that road, so if I'm a developer building in your community, what I do is I build the roads and the pipes and everything else, and I give it to you all. It's free infrastructure, right?
No,
No. You have to maintain it. You have to replace it. And it's not cheap. And you all see that. For those of you that see the budget, you see how expensive it is. So that replacement reserve for that road in 2010, so we went ahead and stretched it out to 50 years. We said, we're going to give you an extra decade on your roads. So in 2010, this is the cost of that road, that big tall spike right there. My pointer's not really bright. So in blue is your revenue. In red is the replacement reserves, because every year from 1960, you kept on taking more and more and more roads. So let me ask you a really simple math problem. Do you have enough blue to pay for the red? Now the scary thing is, not taking on any more roads, those roads from 1960 to 2015 are going to start cycling in, and this is what it's going to look like over time. So do you have enough blue to pay for the red? I'll make it easier. Do you have enough blue to pay for the red? No. So the red is 18 times the cost of the blue, your revenue. And what's even more scary is that revenue that you think you have, half of it's already committed to debt service on the bonds for all the red stuff. That's money you don't see. That goes straight to San Francisco or New York City, wherever your bonding agency is, and you don't see that. So you're going broke. So this is a side view of the model. In red, we sent everybody a bill for all their costs. We sent it to everybody's property. And in green, above the line, is their taxes. In any business, we're going to net our costs against our revenues. So you net the red stuff against the green stuff, and you get what's in the black and what's in the red. And here's the whole thing in 3D, and you can see the whole entire county bleeding. Just drop this thing on the floor, and this is how it pops up. What's kind of phenomenal is these big red chunks out here. I'm sorry if anybody has red-green color blindness, but this is, I should have changed the colors on this. But you can see how expensive and upside down financially the stuff in red is. And they told us, they said, well, people want to live out there. We're like, yeah, you're paying them to move out there. They're not covering their costs. If you change the tax bill, it would change the behavior of how people live. But right now, it's financially upside down. So just go through some numbers real quick. So in 1950, they had 34,000 people, 5 feet of pipe per person, and 2.4 fire hydrants per 1,000 people. They've grown their population to 122,000 people, 121,000 people. They've grown their feet of pipe per person to 50 feet of pipe per person, and 51 fire hydrants per 1,000 people. This is how they've grown their community. That's the infrastructure they've added per person. So their population has grown about 350%. Their liability has grown 1,000 and 2,000%. And they told us, the whole time they told us, they're like, look, Joe, we got gas money out of the Gulf. We got rich. Okay, well, look at that. So this is adjusted for today's dollars. The average household income was $28,000, and they've grown their wealth to $45,000. So they've grown their wealth 160%, but they've grown their liability 1,000 and 2,000%. This is their numbers. This is the reality of the situation that they're in. They've bought too much stuff. So this is like me getting a $1,000 a year raise and convincing my wife into building a 25,000 square foot addition on my house. It just doesn't pencil out. So they're in a really, really serious problem. They're going broke. And the taxes that the average household pays, now again, it's Louisiana. They really like paying low taxes, so they keep their property tax value low. So the average house at $150,000 pretty much kicks up about $1,500 a year in taxes. Of that, what actually matriculates to the roads is $150. So the rest of that tax bill goes to police, fire, other services, parks, etc. Now, if you took the roads and said, well, what should they be putting into the reserve account on an annual basis, that number is $3,000 a year. Y'all see a problem yet? Now, that's just the roads. There's stuff under the roads that need to be replaced as well. They have 45% of their system is in clay tile pipe. That's another $4,000 a year. So the average house is upside down $7,000. And I'd be a Pollyanna to say, go off and just charge everybody $7,000 in new taxes. That's just not going to happen. But what they need to do is they need to start investing in stuff that's net positive to start getting themselves out of that hole. And that's the reality of the politics that they're in. They're looking at the numbers and figuring out what they can afford. But this is the problem with a lot of American cities, that we've done this with this whole, let's just build into the future without ever thinking through what costs we're going to be punting on to our children or our grandkids. And they're not alone. Like I said, look for other parents and grandparents. Go to those places that have been down these roads long before you. South Bend, Indiana. These old Rust Belt towns are full of phenomenal lessons. We just took their pipes On the bottom is a bar chart of their population. They peaked in 1963. In 1963, they lost Studebaker and Packard to Detroit. Their population dropped, but that was their best year ever. But they flatlined. They haven't added any more people since 1963. I'm sorry. On the right is their pipe growth, growing their community. I'll put a boundary in when their population stops. You can see them adding pipe and adding their community. And right about there is when their population stops. So if you're not adding more people, why are you adding more infrastructure? Why are you adding more liability to your community? You can't afford yourselves right now. How is this going to be for your kids? Are they going to be able to pay for this stuff? Because these pipes don't last forever. So showing their pipe indexed against their population, the pipe growth is on the top line, their population growth is on the bottom line. And I asked them, I said, were you guys like dying of thirst in the streets in 1930 or something like that you needed all this extra pipe? Like, what's up with that? And again, this is infrastructure, it's a cost. Stretched end to end, their pipes will go from South Bend, Indiana to about a block away from my office. This is stuff that they need to fix. So just to close with some lessons, there's a lot of weird stuff you'll get into. One of my favorites are just odd things that are built inside the system that makes no sense. And it doesn't mean you have to continue them forward. My favorite is, this is Cheyenne, Wyoming. We can go into the computer and turn off all the buildings, all the improvements, and just look at the dirt value per acre. Just the dirt. There's no buildings in this image. So we have low value here in blue, red is hot value. And I don't know if it's hard for me to see what you can see. I don't know if this is rich enough in color. Can we get the lights turned down a little bit darker? Oh, she's working on it? Okay, cool. Can y'all see this back there?
There's like a light blue and a grayish color maybe.
Yeah, so you see how up here in the upper left it's all kind of monolithically blue. That's how you'd expect your neighborhood to operate. Everybody in your neighborhood's the same value per acre. So you and all of your neighbors are valued at the same. When I was presenting on here where this one's blue, let me see if I can get my cursor to work here. Where this one's blue, and then right across the street, this jumps up to orange. How by crossing the street in the same zoning category can I go from $15,000 an acre to $35,000 an acre? How does it double in value crossing the street? And the tax assessor was sitting in the front row, and she just raises her hand, and she goes, "You don't understand." And I'm like, "Okay, tell me. I don't know. What is it? How is it in the same zoning category?" She goes, "Well, the more land you have, this person's got more land here." Let's see if I can get this going again. Oops. And my cursor, well, this person's got more land than that person. So the more land they have, the lower the value. That's our standard. The more land you have, the lower the value. The mayor just about laughed and spat coffee out of his nose. He was laughing so hard. Everybody in the room was laughing. I was like, really? I get more of your stuff. I've got 3 miles of infrastructure around this property. This person's got 200 feet of frontage. She goes, "Yeah, we don't count infrastructure as part of the assessment." I was like, all right. I've got a bigger site. A bigger site means I could put more stuff on it. More stuff means more commerce. More commerce means more trips, more car accidents, more police calls, more fire calls. Yeah, we don't count that. That's not part of the assessment. It's our standard. The more land you have, the lower the value. So one of the reasons why I was at that assessors conference was to ask them, where did they get this standard? And I asked them, I said, did Moses deliver it to you? Like, where did this come from? And they thought it was hilarious, by the way. Their magazine is called Fair and Equitable. So I asked them, how is this fair and how is it equitable? And they're like, it's not. I'm like, where'd this standard come from? They're like, we don't know. I'm like, does this make any sense whatsoever? They're like, no, you need to talk to Larry Clark. So I tracked this guy, Larry Clark, down in the hallway, and I asked him, is it fair or equitable? He's like, no. I'm like, where'd this come from? He's like, probably the 1700s somewhere. Our agricultural policy makes no sense. I'm like, can you change it? He's like, yeah, we probably should. This is the system that you guys are all trapped in, right? So when you talk to your assessor is going to be like, it is our standard. You cannot change it. It's like, why? Is somebody from the International Association of Taxing Officers going to show up and give them a demerit point or something? Is somebody going to go to jail if they change the assessment policies? No. but this is harming you all. So realize these aren't invisible market forces making me as a developer behave this way in your community. National money, when you see it come into your community, it's set up on all of these standards to take advantage and exploit what's going on in your community. But it's your community. So realize taxes drive a lot of this stuff. As an architect and a designer, it's easier for me to see this stuff. In Normandy, you were taxed on your building footprint for 100 years. People started projecting out over the street, and they threw away the tax policy because buildings started catching each other on fire because they're going right over the street. And in England, you were taxed progressively on windows. Glass was expensive. The more windows you owned, the higher the shillings rate in your taxes. And then people started boarding up their windows to taxes, and they changed the tax policy. In France, everything below your roof line was considered your building. Anything above the roof line here was considered the roof. So people started shoving stories up at the roof to avoid zoning policies, basically. So put the gun down. Help yourself. You know, at the law conference that we went to, I threw this out there. Somebody had asked, well, what can you do from a law standpoint? And there's a lot of things you can do, but one of my favorites is land value taxation. Who's heard of land value taxation? Or Henry George, same guy that's read the tax assessment documents. We need to put you to work here. Henry George was a tax economist in the 1800s, and he came up with this tax policy of just eliminating building improvement value. If you think of what was going on in the 1800s on the East Coast, you had a lot of immigration, a lot of pressure on real estate, and extremely expensive land value. And those families that came off the Mayflower, and their family was the Copleys, they could hold on to that land and bequeath it to their grandkids and cause a problem for Boston because they were speculating. They were just holding on to land for the future. But the community had this housing crisis. They had expensive land and infrastructure, and that person was being taxed very little because they had no improvement value on their land. Maggie Phillips, Elizabeth Maggie Phillips, who I love her eyebrows, by the way, but she was a Georgist. She realized adults are too set in their ways. No, that's perfect. No, that's great. She realized adults are too set in their ways, so she didn't want to teach adults anything. So she's the famous originator of board games. She invented a game that teaches us all land value taxation. Do you all recognize the game? Monopoly. If you think of Monopoly, you win by assembling land, location's critical, and you put buildings on it and you win the game. So just to close, my town, Asheville, at $12.8 billion is worth more than the Jazz. We're actually about, what is that, about 28 Jazzes. You know, I can guarantee you that the owner of the Jazz knows Gordon Hayward's towel bill. I can tell you that the cups in my nightclub cost 5 cents a pop. Now, I don't run the nightclub, but we have to know the numbers on that. We have to make sense of that, how that all operates. So if there's anything you can take away from my presentation is just do the math on this stuff and keep yourself out of bankruptcy. Thank you.